and welcome to the CHRISTWVRKS podcast. Today I've got Eeli from Fawn Limbs with me. So Eeli, could you basically explain, give a rundown of what Fawn Limbs is?
Yeah, hey everyone. So I am Eeli. It's a guitarist and vocalist for Fawn Limbs, and it's basically myself, Lee Fisher on drums, and Samuel Smith on bass, and we just kind of do a whole lot of noise. In a nutshell.
Yeah.
So
Like
that's it basically.
you guys, it's not like you don't all live in the same city, right?
No. So I live in Finland. It's a country, and then Lee lives in Pennsylvania, and Samuel is in New York. Yeah, New York. Yeah.
Okay, so how did it start? How did it? I mean, so it's kind of like a home studio project then, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So like, how did it like come together if all you guys are from different places?
Well, actually, initially, Lee and I were together in this project called Infinite Nomad, featuring us two and then two members from Coma Cluster Void, and it came together quite oddly, because I was friends on Facebook with one of the members, and they posted some kind of recording clip to their page, and then I just randomly commented that if they need a vocalist, I can jump in. And then they did and asked me to join them, and then maybe 6 months or so later, Lee and I started to talk, and then he actually posted a drum clip to Facebook as well, saying that he'd like to start some kind of a grindcore, mathcore band. And then, as it happens, I was already writing material like that. So then I just sent him a message and said that, hey, we should start a band. That's it.
It's like, what I mean, the traditional notion of like a band being like a bunch of guys that get together every week and make music in the garage or whatever. Like, how valid an approach do you think that is in the modern world?
I mean, to each their own. It depends. Of course, a lot of times it would be easier if we lived even somewhere near each other. And I'm not saying that getting together to rehearse would be bad by any means, but this kind of long distance thing, it works really well for us.
Especially right now, right?
Yeah, especially right now.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's like everyone is trying to set that sort of situation up now, because people are getting very frustrated not being able to do any music stuff. So then they're trying to sort it out, but with you guys, that's just the way it's always been. So there's no change, basically.
Yeah, basically, and it's been like funny because just like you said, a lot of bands are just trying to learn that process, and then I see them on social media or wherever, just posting about it and saying that it's difficult or hard or something like that. And simultaneously, we're just doing this already and wondering that what's the fuss about, because there really is no reason you couldn't make it work in a long distance sort of relationship as well. So it's really not difficult by any means. It just requires a different mindset to do.
Yeah, and equipment.
Yeah, also that. But you can get by with less, like little. You don't need to have fancy high tech.
No, for sure. Yeah.
So I think that is also something that a lot of bands who now have to adapt to this new situation are just finding out that you don't have to be some kind of a fucking billionaire to run this sort of thing.
Yeah, like what is you guys sort of mechanism for how it works? Like your guitar, right? So do you kind of do you program some drums along with guitar riffs?
Yeah. So basically I just think a lot. You know, I write with the guitar, and usually I don't even have a full song done. Usually it's just one or two different parts, and then I program the drums, and then record on top of that, and then just move along as long as the track requires, and then on top of programming the drums and recording the guitars, I do this kind of a bass emulator that I just record one additional guitar line and then bring it down with a pitch shifter, so it kind of acts like a bass for the demo. And that's basically it. Then I send it to the other guys, and so far, yeah. Yeah. So far they have just been like, okay, it's fine, let's do it, and then we just do it. So we don't, bounce like different parts around or anything. It's just I demo complete songs, and then we take it from there.
Yeah. So like I mean, you guys have got like a lot of releases now. It's like 8 releases.
Yeah, close to that. I think I'm not sure, maybe 7 or 8. Yeah.
So like, have you done gigs?
No.
Okay, no. Not a single show yet.
No. It's like some people have pointed out that why we're not touring instead of just writing constantly, but it suits us because it's just us three. So basically, if we wanted to perform live, we should get at least one live guitarist, maybe 2, to make it work. And then, of course, the distance is a pain in the ass. Because it require either myself flying to the States or those guys coming over here. So
you can't just turn up for tour. You have to rehearse before that as well, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing, because even though we can, of course, practice on our own, getting ourselves, getting ourselves in a place where we could tour, we should maybe be able to rehearse for like at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So,
it absolutely makes it more difficult to make.
I mean, is it because I mean you guys are like, sorry, my dogs have just come in and one of them is humping the other one. I mean, is it one of the goals long term to actually start doing that? Because you guys are pretty well known now. So, I mean, like Frontierer, when they kind of blew up, it's like, now we have to do this live kind of thing. And but for them it was easier because like what I was going to say was the way it worked for them was they were essentially a band all mostly based in Edinburgh, but then had a singer that was from America. So they did their first rehearsal with the singer with Chad was I think the day before their first show, which was like headlining Tech Fest. And then so they rehearsed tons, and then they just had to have Chad turn up and go over the top. So that's fine, basically, That's the same as you guys that would have to actually all be playing music for the first time together.
And I mean, well, in a way, it's a goal for us, to be eventually able to perform the tour. It would be I'd like to do that, but it's not something that we try to actively pursue at the moment. Of course, because of the global shit. So, but aside from that, maybe one day Not today, not tomorrow, not fucking next month or even next
right
year.
Now, you kind of have a get out.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, also yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because that's it's not like, I mean, you see people starting to organize tours or at least shows now, and I'm still like, what?
Yeah,
like,
it's insane. I just don't understand how people have the confidence to do that yet.
Yeah,
because
it's like thinking, but it's because even once we're kind of like allowed to put on shows, they'll still be like half capacity or whatever, and which means tickets will have to be like £20, like to make it financially viable. And for me, like it's going to be half as good as a normal show, and so and I'm having to pay twice as much, so it's just like
and it's it's a kind of uncertainty that's going on, and all that, because a lot of people also have to travel, to go to any shows, and they just can't take the risk at the moment. So I think that arranging any kind of tours, like big live shows or anything, it's just it's a waste of time at the moment, because
there's
obviously
you can't plan anything at the moment.
Exactly.
Tons of money in, you can't bank on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, also that's another thing for you guys, is that even if it wasn't for all this, you would need to know it's financially viable for you to be doing this as well.
Yeah, and it's like I've been joking around that anytime when someone says that, hey, come play my fucking living room or whatever, I'm always like, yeah, okay, we can make that happen, but you need to pay me like $2,000 to afford fucking plane tickets. So yeah, it would need to be really viable for us to make happen. And I don't mean that I really don't care if we get paid playing, but we have to be able to make up for the cost of making it happen, basically.
No, of course. I think that's something that like people forget about when it comes to paying bands. Like, reality is most guys in bands don't care that much about getting paid to do it, but they just want some of their costs negated, really. And like the sums of money that people can be asking for are sometimes a lot of money, but that doesn't mean it's even near what it actually costs.
No.
Like, I mean, when you look at like even just your cost of instruments and gear, it's like we like get that, and then we're just like, well, that money is just like imaginary now, because I know like the amount of shows I'd have to play to pay for my Axe effects is just ridiculous.
It's just and it's like exactly because of that, we don't want to stress about it too much, because obviously we're not in a place where we'd make like tons of cash. So rather than spending those little resources that we had to trying to make some small US tours happen, we want to focus in just making music and putting
it out a little bit, man.
Oh,
there you are. Yeah. So I mean, that's it. I mean, so you really have focused on writing instead, though. Which is why you've got so fucking much material. Do you see when you're like kind of polishing off, like, so one thing that I've been worrying about when it comes to using exactly the same equipment and then starting another album is that I'm like, oh shit, what if it sounds just exactly the same? Like if it sounds like a kind of, it's like, you have all these songs and they sound a certain way, and then it just sounds, the next album just sounds like it should be like the last album should be longer. You know, do you have like a technique or a sort of method for countering that, or do you just kind of?
Well, there is if I'm being honest, there's exactly two different things that factor in on that, and it's that the main thing is that when I start to write, it usually takes around maybe from few weeks to a month. So it's a very intense writing session. And
for a whole album.
Sorry, what?
For a whole album.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the first album, the very first EP took maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks to do, and then the first album took more or less about a month, and then this new one took maybe like a month's worth of intense writing, and then I had a little break, and then finished it in a few weeks. Maybe after that.
Do you like really intense, and then just like not touch it, and then come back again, and you're just like, psh, or?
No, actually, I just I haven't written any extra songs or anything like that. So usually, if we would have end up throwing something in the bin, it would have need to be really fucking bad, and that
like at that point, I mean, I think when you're writing it like on a computer, like how you are, it's much more apparent very quickly if it's something you should just bin and never show anyone. So then you don't have that thing of when you're writing a song in a room together and stuff, and then it's only when you actually record it finally when you really get to hear it, and then you go, oh, that's shit. And then you go, and you put so much, and then you've literally paid to record it as well. So then you're like, I don't want to throw it away.
You know? Yeah, true. So we have that going for us, that we don't have to pay for anyone to record, and then I think that on top of that writing process, the reason why our releases are different is that we have different producers for each album, or almost.
Try again, man.
Yeah. So I don't need to fucking shout. So yeah. One thing that adds to that is that we have different producers on different releases.
Right. So you're not sort of and mastering it yourself?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, and because for me, example, I only record the DIs for the guitars and then send them over, and then the engineer reamps them. I have no fucking idea what's happening. I don't care because
that would be actually quite nice, like to kind of just give it away like that, and then you don't have to agonize over it.
True.
Yeah, with me, with writing CHRISTWVRKS stuff, like the actual song, like the structure of the song and all the instruments are done in like almost like one session of sitting down at the computer, and then it's like weeks of playing around with all the different settings and shit like that. And that's even when I have all my templates, I even have templates to the extent of like I have a template that's for like a slower song and a template that's for a faster song, like and even then I still have to fuck around with settings and shit so much that it takes at least 80% of the time spent writing or song.
And I mean the actual writing itself doesn't take that much time, but I've noticed that one of the main things that actually take up the time is coming up with all these different effects, these glitch things that we do, and those can take like hours for one thing. So that is maybe the most takes up the most time overall.
But that's what levels it up from being like just another band to
Mm-hmm.
really something like this, you know, its own thing, because you do put that,
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
that particular idea for how that's supposed to be, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the glitch stuff is something that sets us apart from most. And I'm not gonna fucking lie and try to say that I made it up or anything like that. But for example, maybe the main reason I started to incorporate that into my writing was hearing from Vera. Like, that's just obvious.
Yeah. It's funny,
So,
like it was me and my wee brother that actually introduced Pedram to breakcore and digital hardcore.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Pedram was in. Sorry, my dog's wanting up.
Yeah.
He was in my wee brother's year at school.
Yeah.
And we were listening to like Alec Empire and Atari Teenage Riot were like our two favorite bands when we were like much younger, like 14 years old. And then so like Pedram was one of the only people in Sam's year that listened to like heavy, like proper heavy music. Like everyone at that time was listening to like System of a Down and shit. And Slipknot, that was really popular, but like those two were like the only ones that were listening to like, you know, like Cannibal Corpse and, you know, extreme stuff. So me and Sam's favorite thing was like Atari Teenage Riot and Alec Empire. So then it was Sam that showed Pedram that stuff, and then that's how he got into the kind of extreme electronic stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite interesting to know.
But then that's like the avenue with which I've ended up doing CHRISTWVRKS was really it came from my initial interest in like Atari Teenage Riot, and now CHRISTWVRKS is like almost like a black metal Atari Teenage Riot.
So that's that's actually funny that you should say that, because it kind of adds up. Adds up now that I think.
Sense, right?
It makes sense. Yeah.
Like, how was working with Pedram then for the new album?
It was all in all, it was a nice experience, but you know, finding that middle ground that we were happy and he was happy, it took a moment.
Yeah. And he really knows what he thinks, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
And he's not fucking afraid to tell you either.
No. So I think that also, you know, it was you know, lesson for all of us. And I mean, it kind of made us, you know, need to voice our opinions in a whole different way. And I think it really served a purpose, you know, now when thinking back at it. But you know, it was all in all, it was fine. But you know, those little things needed some attention and some discussions. But yeah. All in all, it was really pleasant.
I would imagine, like, if it's just completely smooth sailing, you're probably not making anything very interesting, to be honest.
True. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. So it was all about, you know, making our own visions meet in the middle.
Where was it? I mean, because like when I listened, like when you sent me and I listened to it a lot. I think it was kind of exactly what I thought it might sound like. If you know what I mean, like you could really hear like Pedram and you guys, and it was basically. So were you wanting it to be a little bit more towards your side, your previous side, or what?
I'd say no. We wanted to. One of the reasons why we wanted to work with PET was, to up ourselves and to progress into one way. And from the start, we wanted this new album to be on a whole other level, like production-wise, and I think that is exactly what we managed to do as well. So, and one of the reasons why we wanted to work with PET to begin with. So, I think we achieved that pretty well.
Yeah, I think well, the people that I've spoke to about it, one of the things that I've heard a couple of times was that people say it's like, because simultaneously your music is so extreme, and then PET's production on top of that, or like with that, it's like the first time you listen to it is just such a fucking like extreme experience to have to go through, because it's so like it's got that real like sandpaper on the ears kind of effect. Yeah. And like some people said like the first time I listened to it, I didn't really like it, but at the same time, I was really drawn to listen to it again. And then you just had to get in that mode, and then it was like, and then it became kind of better.
Yeah, and that is actually kind of one of the things that we wanted from it, because the first time when you listen to the whole album, it's just like, what the fuck was that? You have no idea what's happening, and but then you have to replay it, re-listen to it, and then start to pick out those little things along the way. And I think that that's definitely one of the reasons as to why we are so happy with it, is because those little things are plenty. And I mean, if you're a fan of that kind of music at all, I pretty much will guarantee that you'll find even something likable in the album.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a very like crystallized idea of that sort of thing. I think that one thing with you guys that I kind of find is like, it's almost like kind of taking Sugar, Calculating Infinity era Dillinger Escape Plan, and then kind of like hyper modernizing it and giving it this sort of like Nails grindcore kind of putting it in that spiky jacket, and and then
I mean, actually funny you should say that, because I just had this conversation with someone, because a lot of people have been comparing us to Dillinger, and I have never heard a single album of theirs.
Really?
Like, never.
Crazy. But you do realize they're like really, really good, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been told. I've heard some songs, but I've never really listened to them.
Yeah.
And but other thing is that I mean, that's kind of the reason why we might, stand up like a sore thumb from the rest. Yeah, and because the way I see it is that we write tracks that in essence are mathcore, but then we produce them like maybe grindcore would be produced. So it's something different in that sense.
Yeah. Like I guess the kind of ideas that you're putting in there that are what people would call like Dillinger Escape Plan type of ideas. I mean, they definitely don't. It's more like a technique. Strangely, it's more like there is similar techniques, but they don't have the same timbre as Dillinger Escape Plan. which is presumably because you just like not listened to them before, so you're not. Like.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of second hand in that way because then again, even though I'm not listening to Dillinger, I might be listening to 100 other things that have been listening.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like indirect.
So if not Dillinger Escape Plan, who would you say like who would you say that has been influencing you strongly?
Well, it's going to sound a bit dull, but maybe the biggest like.
Sorry.
Yeah. Maybe the single biggest enlightenment for me in terms of music was when I first heard Frontier and Orange Mathematics. It was just so like I don't know, it's hard to describe, but when I listened to the album, it made me constantly think about like, oh fuck, you can do like things that way or this way, and still end up sounding like so massive. And so I think on an individual level, Frontier has definitely been the biggest influence for me, but that's not necessarily, on a writing point of view.
I didn't say you sound like them. Like, your kind of like mindset, I would say that you sound like them. You know what I mean? It's more like a kind of like an objective, like a similar objective of what you want people to experience rather than what you want to sound like.
And then maybe sometime later, Carbon did the same.
Yeah, I can see that a bit more. Or like Gaza as well, maybe.
Yeah. So it's not like, it's not a surprise by any means that those bands have been the most influential when it comes to this particular project. So I'd say Frontier and Carbon has the biggest single influences for me.
Yeah, I had a similar thing when I was in Godhole, which was my band before CHRISTWVRKS, and it was like a kind of like Full of Hell. We were really basically I decided to start the band after I saw Full of Hell live the first time, and it was kind of like noise, power violence kind of thing. But people used to tell me all the time that we were really, really like Swans, and also Godflesh, and I was just like, oh, it's really funny that everyone should say that because I've never listened to them before. And then so I had the same thing, but then I did listen to Swans, and I honestly didn't listen to anything else for 6 months because there's so much of it as well that I was just like chronologically working my way through it, and I'm listening to albums over and over and over again. I was just and I was just like, how have I never listened to this before?
And a similar thing happened to me. I recently started this kind of like a ambient drone project as well, and when we released our first EP in April, I think, and people were comparing us a lot to Godspeed You Black Emperor, also who I had never heard before, and then I put them on and I was like, fuck me, I have been missing out quite badly.
I'd been listening to them for a while, but I'd never listened to the first record. And then like that one's so different from everything else, and it's so much more like something made for me, So I was just, I can't believe I've not heard this one, because it's so much more like brutal and depressing. So the thing, another thing I wanted to ask you about is like, well, I suppose you kind of like negated my question a bit by saying you don't really listen to Dillinger Escape Plan and stuff, but like there's a huge sort of wave currently of these bands that I call it like MySpace core, you know? Like the best example is CU Space Cowboy. I mean, and they're like, for me anyway, I fucking love them. I'm like, these guys are doing this better. I mean, they're like 21 or whatever, so they were not around during that era, but they're doing it better than anyone ever did that stuff, you know? And so that's a kind of thing I kind of felt from your stuff. It's like, it's taking, I mean, you're the same age as me, roughly, like early 30s.
No, I'm 25.
Oh, really? Okay, so yeah, you're the same. You weren't there during the MySpace time. Yeah. So that's the thing. I assumed from listening to you, and also like and from talking with Pedram as well, that what Frontier kind of is like what Pedram wanted to hear when he was like 15 years old, or at least like in his head when he listened to the first Dillinger Escape Plan album. This is what it sounded like, you know. So like, I assumed that you were older and you were kind of like harking back to your childhood. But I guess like, so how do you take me saying that to you then? If this is, if you're not as old as I am.
What was the question?
Well, like, I mean, I was like, for me, the whole thing that I find really amusing is that there's so many bands these days that are kind of like they're like doing, you know, when you get D-beat bands that are like discharge worship bands, they're like doing that, but with like MySpace music. And like, to me, that's that's so funny, like, because even at the time, everyone made fun of MySpace. Like, it was never like this. It wasn't like punk where people were like, "This is a revolution," you know, that is going to last forever. Like, MySpace was constantly ridiculed, and all those bands that were from doing that were also constantly ridiculed. And now there's this huge new wave, and then like Bane is another good example. They just sound like Slipknot, like early Slipknot. And there's so many bands like that are young guys that are emulating this kind of era. I just find it really weird, but it's great because like
but you know, it kind of it depends from the, you know, your standpoint, I think. Because I think you can do, you know, you can take influence from that era or any other for that matter, but you should, you know, I think you should always still try to do your own thing. Even if it ended up, you know, like sounding like MySpace core or what the fuck it's called, then fine. But you know, I'm personally not very nostalgic person, and so I don't. You know, in essence, I don't really care about, you know, those what's topical at the moment and what isn't. But then again, we have Lee, our drummer, who's, I think he is 46 now. He's like older than my dad. And he mainly listens to death metal and jazz from the early 90s, you know, to 2000. And so it's kind of, we're like trying to find some kind of balance in between, where obviously I am the more modern one on the bunch, and then Lee is like this old grumpy grandpa in there. And so it's just about making those different kind of influences work together. And and like you said, there's been this kind of new surge of, you know, MySpace, and suddenly everyone's, you know, liking stuff that came out back then. But like you said, they were, you know, laughed off back then. So I just find it, you know, very strange.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. So I find it strange too. So like, I was there, like, so
yeah.
But I mean, I think these days anyway. I think that stuff is still sounding a bit more of its own thing as well, though it is quite separate. Whereas like you still now have just like D-beat bands that are just really churning out the same shit over and over again. Which is like fine if that's what you want to do, but like to me, it's not in the spirit of punk to be churning out the same bullshit forever.
I agree.
And but I mean, again, like if that's just like if it's literally just fun to do that, because it is playing DB bands is fun as fuck. So like, why not? But yeah, it's not for me. I just get too bored too quickly. I think my dogs want to get out. Go. Yeah. So, let me see. Yeah. So, like, when have you been affected personally by lockdown and stuff, or is it kind of been business as usual for that as well?
Pretty much, yeah. Hasn't affected me that much.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say per se. It just haven't.
Yeah. And you'll be able to continue doing all the stuff you would be doing anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's no way around it. I mean, it's I've been able to carry on as usual, and same with the other guys. So we've been doing that. It hasn't really affected us, maybe on an individual level, but not for me personally, not directly. That's it.
So, like, what about? Do you think it affected the kind of reception of the record? Like, has that been different for compared with other ones? Like in terms of not like if people are liking it, but like in terms of people, like, are you like, do you think you're not selling as much as you would have, or there's been more or less coverage of it, or anything like that?
Well, I need to think a bit. So what you're asking is that
like,
please repeat your initial question.
So, like, do you think like everything being in lockdown and stuff has affected your
So I mean, if anything, I think that people have been like when talking about our audience, I think now that people are forced to, stay in their homes and not do anything, they've been able to focus. Well, music is like one of the few things that you can always enjoy regardless of the situation, and I think that we haven't, as a band, really suffered at all from the current situation. When we put out, when we released the first single and put out the pre-orders for the album, maybe 4 weeks ago or something like that, it was insane. The amount of, our sales coming directly to us and to all of our different labels, it was like, like never before.
Really? So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing is that besides the new album, we're simultaneously pressing the first album on vinyl as well. And then our US label, Roman Numeral, is doing also the latest EP from last December on 7-inch. And then earlier this year, we released that compilation LP with all our first 3 EPs.
Yeah.
So, and I counted that together there was maybe a little over 1,500 different units of vinyl alone, and we sold nearly half of our entire inventory in one day.
Fuck. Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's pretty great, and in that sense, I really can't say that the situation would have affected us as a band at all. And and I don't know. When we released first single, we got quite a good amount of coverage as well, but we haven't gotten any reviews yet. So at the moment, we're waiting on those to happen if they happen. But we're not really like stressing too much about it.
Need to at this point, after that day one sales, then you're kind of like it's good.
Yeah, you know what? Whatever. I don't care.
You could not sell a single more, and you'd be still like, fine. Like,
yeah, and I mean, it's just it goes to show that you know, when you just put the hard work in it and do your best, regardless of your recording setups or fucking anything else, it shows. And I think that's our main goal is kind of that in exchange, you know, to people believing in us and putting the faith on us on that end. Our main aim is definitely to give something back to them. So without so yeah. So in that way, that sense, I'd say that, you know, none of the current nothing in the current climate has really affected us anyway. I mean, one thing that it actually has done is that it delays some physical productions, but that's just out of our hands.
Yeah, but people are kind of okay with that sort of stuff now. You know, people.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that though, because I do have a client that owns like one of the bigger brutal death metal labels, and he was saying that actually he sort of, you know, so he basically said that everyone assumes what you just said in terms of like, you know, like people are still like music is the one thing they can still enjoy and stuff. But he was like, my streams from, because his label's like massive, like, you know, 20, 30 bands or whatever. And he was like, the streams are like way down because people aren't going to and from work. They're not going to the gym and all these things where normally you have your headphones in listening to music. Like, so that is way down. I'm not sure what, I spoke to him nearer the start of the lockdown, so I don't know how his releases subsequent to that have gone. But I think it kind of maybe depends like who you are.
Yeah.
What sort of bands you listen to and how you listen to them. And that sort of maybe affects how like your kind of sales and stuff would do in the current situation. Instead, if you're a kind of most mathcore guys are pretty fucking nerdy, right? I mean, it's called mathcore for a reason. So like, you know, like that's exactly the kind of people that militantly follow a band and like, you know, buy records on release day and you know, pre-order and everything like that. So I think you guys are in the perfect situation to not really, not be affected by it, but actually take advantage, or not take advantage, but benefit from it.
In a way, and I think that actually I could have added earlier that our main source of streams and therefore income at the moment is definitely over at Bandcamp. And that's also where we are trying to direct our listeners as much as possible, because
Spotify is ridiculous.
Because of the recent events when that one fucking guy from Sweden wanted to tell music industry how it works. So that's not going down very well.
What is his background? Like, what was he doing before Spotify?
I don't know. I think he kind of looks like the guy who just one day came into existence looking like he does.
That's what I'm saying, because it's kind of like he's trying to tell the music industry how the music industry needs to work, and I'm like, I don't think you actually have a background in the music industry. You're like an app developer.
Yeah, something like that. I just actually this morning I reread that one interview of his that surfaced recently, and it's just like it has nothing to do with music.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So it's just like they have a business and a business model that works. They profit greatly from it, and they just don't give a shit about bands or music.
I know. I mean, the notion of like how he was like saying like like bands, it's not okay to just release like even like one album a year or whatever, and like it's just like that's to me it kind of is like someone it's like kind of like the owner of a greetings card company telling me how much tattoo designs I should do per week.
Pretty much.
Because it's just like you have no idea how long it takes to write a song, to record an album, all this stuff, and you're basically saying that it's okay that we pay you so little for your work because you just need to make more work.
And also on that note, he also said that no one has ever complained about the income from the streams. Like he actually said that no, and people don't complain. And if you were to ask from the people, that they are never satisfied with what they get. So it's kind of like it's just insane. I don't understand.
Barefaced lying, like I mean, well, it's either barefaced lying or like or the obvious kind of like no one is gonna, if you get a meeting with the guy from Spotify, like most guys who end up in a boardroom with him, the first thing they're going to do isn't going to be complaining about how little money artists make.
Obviously.
Because presumably they're sitting in that boardroom because they're also making money off of how little money the artists make, so and then like Beyonce, anyone that makes money off of like actual money off of Spotify is making so much money that they don't, from all sorts of other things, that they don't care how much money they're making from Spotify.
Exactly. And it's like, when you're on that position, you should really be able, to understand both sides of it. It's like, I'm in a fortunate enough position that even though the pandemic is going on and the lockdowns and restrictions and whatever, because I'm able to work from home, it's not like I tell you that it doesn't exist. Nothing's happening and everything is fine. And because that's the deal just for me, and same goes for this third running Spotify. It's just unbelievable, really.
I mean that like guys like that, I'm always, my kind of default thing when people complain about Facebook and shit like that, and my normal saying is like, well, go make your own Facebook then. Like, you know, like, they don't owe you anything. But then that's fine when, so, okay, so my stance on Spotify is like, if you don't like it, then you can either make your own platform that's better, or you can just shut up, like, you know, because but when he then comes out and starts telling people the things that he said and why we should basically be grateful to have them in the first place, it's like, that's when I'm like, no, this is fucking bullshit.
And I think that it's actually pretty good that now people are actually, you know, taking a stand against Spotify because the situation has changed, and
it's not sustainable going forward, because it's going to continue to get less and less, and then, you know, it's already the case that it's basically impossible to make a living being a musician. Like, you know, the notion of being in one band and that paying for your life is just not possible. It's like how little money is getting thrown around when you're in a band, and then you have to divide it between 5 guys. It's just like, it's not possible.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that one estimate that if you know, a single stream gave you a payout of maybe, was it 0.3 cents to make a reasonable living, which was about maybe $2,500 a month. You should be getting maybe 657,000 streams per month, and only if you're just one guy. But if there's more guys in the band, then multiply that. So it's not happening.
It's just not possible. And that's it's like, if you're the, you know, wanting to do a creative thing for a living, you know, basically these days you have to, everyone acknowledges, like, you can't just do one version of that. You have to be, like, for example, if you're doing music, you have to be teaching guitar, you have to be being a session musician as well. You know, you have to also have multiple bands, you know, like, and then you'll probably have some sort of, like, in the music industry job as well, like, you know, being a sound engineer or something like that. You know, it's just
it's all about, you know, gathering those little bits from here and there. You're like today, I mean, I really don't think that anyone is able to make a living out of just performing or releasing music. Like myself, for example, I am at the moment barely making a living out of the shit I do, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's something that I want to do. And you know,
that's how the Spotify, you know, like, the man, aka the guy, that's how he gets away with it, though. It's because people are willing to suffer for their passion, and that's ultimately what we're doing, is we're punishing ourselves with enormous amounts of work, like so many more hours of work per week than we would, you know, for the same. So, like, you know, if we would just worked in a supermarket to make the same amount of money, we'd be working, like, less, you know, like, than half the amount of time, and that's an incredibly poorly paid job. You know? But so guys like that, they rely on people willing, you know, like masochistically willing to suffer for art. You
know? True. And it's like well, like said previously, I think that now is, you know, with all the lockdowns and everything going on, I think now, if ever, is, you know, the time for musicians to make some kind of a difference. And especially in, you know, going against such platforms like Spotify. I'm actually quite surprised that it took so long to begin with. And
yeah, I mean, everyone's basically happy to play along until he opens his mouth and then it up for himself.
Yeah, so I mean, the moral of the story is to just, if you're doing good, just shut up about it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but that's something about celebrities that they just get this like. Well, I suppose it's because they're surrounded by people all the time going like, "Yeah, you're so right, you're so right," and then they're like, "I am so right." You can't pull them away from the mic, and they just have to tell you what a dick they are. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the way it is. But yeah, you're right. All these people should just shut the fuck up, and then they can continue to rape us for many more decades to come. Yeah. Awesome, man. That's been an hour we've been chatting away. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Me. So if you want to tell everyone how to check out your stuff, and so Bandcamp, right?
Yeah. So if you want to listen to our music, mainly Fawn Limbs, because that's the topic of today, you can go to our Bandcamp, which is fawnlimbs.bandcamp.com, and just fucking listen to the music. If you like it, buy it or don't buy it. In essence, it doesn't matter if you do, but I'd like you to. and then follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you may listen to us on Spotify if you must, but that's up to you. So basically that's it for me this time.
Awesome, man. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.